a lot of times funders will ask what your sustainability plan is. And surface level, that sounds very programmatic, but actually what they're asking is about your financials. Our goal is to be as specific and concise and clear so that no matter who picks up this proposal, they'll understand who you are, what you're asking for, what you're going to do with that money.
It's amazing how many bright fundraisers, consultants, folks like yourself and other folks we've had on the pod recently are saying the exact same thing. And if you call and tell one of your top stakeholders what you're facing and you call them first and get them involved, A, obviously they're going to appreciate it. B, you owe it to them because they're an investor in your organization. And then C, they might get someone else in their network involved to help because they want to see you succeed. Well, hey, while we're talking about, so I was doing some research, of course, because we like to get to know our guests and folks that we collaborate with. But so you're a former educator, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because my wife's a fifth grade teacher too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Right
I taught a few different grades, but I was a teacher in the Peace Corps actually for 2.5 years. And then I was an English as a second language teacher in Boston. And I taught social studies and writing in Texas for a few years. So the writing teacher part kind of connects to now still. But
I was going to say, that's such an interesting segue, it's an obvious segue and interesting, of course, as this episode will uncover into grant writing and stuff. But another question was like, I have two daughters. I have a wife. We have the company. We've been in business 9 years. How long have you had LMA Consulting, as a matter of fact?
Yeah, so it's been 5 years this year. So I was founded in 2020. Yeah,
that's awesome. So yeah, you started the company. There's an entrepreneurial thing. You got the background in teaching, and now you have a family too. How many kids do you have?
Just one. So I have a 5-month-old boy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. a little one.
Oh, it's awesome. Good. That's awesome. Well, congrats. That's fantastic. No, it's fun. It's interesting because I've been on a few pods and talked about, starting the company. We started in 2016 and it was just me, and it's a family company. And our first employee, I call her patient zero, was my sister. And now my brother-in-law, he's in the next office, and we've got, our headquarters in Edmond, Oklahoma. I'm in far Northern California. And my business partner is my best friend and was our best client. And it's so funny. It's interesting because there's been a couple of times where I said I've had an unhealthy relationship with the company because, starting a family and all that stuff. And my wife was in the hospital once when she was carrying our youngest. And I catch myself like taking calls and pacing up and down the hallway and later on going, well, what was I doing? But it's just like, that's what happens when you start your own shop, when you open up your own shop. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome,
and it's changed over time for me. When I first started it, I would say maybe for the first 8 months or so, I knew that I wanted to do this full time, but I started as, it was kind of a side hustle. I was still working as an internal nonprofit staff person full time and was doing this on nights and weekends. And after about 8 or 9 months, I was finally able to leave that full-time job and do this full-time. And so it's, for a while, it was just me. And now we have a full team. We've got 4 writers. We have a strategy director, a marketing person. We have a pretty robust team now compared to just, little old me at first. And It's a lot of fun. It's changed a lot. Since, that first year, but it's been a lot of fun, and we get to work with such great clients too. Yeah. That's the best part of it, just kind of surrounding ourselves with people who are really passionate about the work that they do.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been around fundraisers for a minute too. And it's just, my partner, Jason, coined the phrase, but, whenever we talk to a nonprofit, regardless of what their proclivity is for, what they do and their mission, we say, y'all are the safety net of society. And it feels very, very good to help folks like that raise money, right? No matter what they're doing. I'm very passionate about the grant side of things. I think, and I'm not going to tell you your business, but congratulations, by the way, backtrack. Congratulations on starting the company. I call it taking the plunge and betting on yourself. I think opening up your own shop is such a noble enterprise, even if it is a nonprofit, of course. I think it's so noble. I grew up in a small business family with a restaurant and all that stuff. I didn't know that that's what it was called, entrepreneurship, when my dad started a restaurant. But it's very, like I said, it is very noble and it's difficult at times for sure. And it's so worth it. So congrats to you and hats off to you for doing it in the first place.
Thank you. And same with your business as well. It sounds like your business has really taken off over the years and grown quite a bit. So same to you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's been really cool. Yeah, we're 19 strong right now, and so yeah, we're not all related. Even though I said we're a family business, but a lot of us are. So,
yeah, might as well be family with some of them. At
this point, watching folks like have children and go through ups and downs. As a matter of fact, has been really cool. But hey, I'll chase. It's Monday morning. I'm very caffeinated. I'm chasing rabbits, but I want to talk about grant writing because I am so passionate about the opportunity. Now you can speak more to that than I can. And Lynn, I'm not a headline chaser at all. However, there is a lot in the news. I mean, we're recording this in late March, 2025, and a lot of folks are, fundraising is very difficult right now and access to funds. And there's a lot of quote unquote, once again, uncertainty. I'm not conditioned to chase headlines. I think people need to work hard and do everything they can to engage and find these resources and what have you, because they're there. But, why grant writing? And I know that your background was in, you have the literary background and all those things, right? Yeah. But I think it's a massive opportunity, but just tell us how you got into it, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I'll give you the kind of long story of how I personally got into grant writing, because I find it to be kind of a fun challenge. It's sort of like a fun puzzle that you have to figure out.
It does seem like a challenge, but I mean that in the best possible way. All due respect, for sure.
Yeah. So I had shared a little bit before of, I had served in the Peace Corps a while back from 2012 to 2014. And that was really like my first big exposure. I had volunteered at nonprofits before, but that was my first big exposure to an NGO that was doing great work. And that experience really led me to change the trajectory of my career afterwards. I felt really passionate about community-driven nonprofit work, which, that community-driven piece is key. Those organizations that the communities that they're impacting are the ones that are making the decisions and leading the change. And when I came back to the U.S., I was, I had gone to school to be a teacher. I was still teaching, but I decided I wanted to pivot my career and go into the nonprofit space. So I decided to go back to school, get an MBA in nonprofit leadership, all while teaching and volunteering at nonprofits. And eventually I switched my career over and started working in Boston at a education-based nonprofit. And when I was there, the funny thing about nonprofits that you probably know is that you wear many hats. Not only was I the lead and only grant writer for the organization while I was there, but I was also the marketing and communications person. Yeah. I was running education programs. I was managing staff. So, you're doing the job of many people, and that's not unique to just me or that organization. That's nonprofit life.
I was going to say, like you said wearing many hats, but that's like so kind to put it that way. We always say underpaid, overworked. There's 2.5, average staff. It's like, yes, of course, many hats. And we had a guest on recently, Susanna Doyle from MDA, and she said, I don't get paid in dollars. I get paid in feelings.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, for me, in thinking about all the different areas of my role, I really found that the grant writing piece was my favorite. And it felt like this kind of fun jigsaw puzzle where every funder is different and you really need to find the right fit funder that aligns with your mission and your need, and really figuring out how to crack that code of getting a foot in the door with the funder and then stewarding the funder, making sure that once you do receive funds, how do you keep them as a recurring supporter. And, I decided, or what I realized, I should say, is that the organization I was at was not unique in the sense of having this capacity challenge. A lot of nonprofits have this challenge. So I started this business with the idea of helping to take the burden off of the plates of nonprofits who are already doing so many other things, but could use the extra time to put towards grants. So when we work with nonprofits, the idea is that we're helping alleviate that burden. We're still working very collaboratively with them. So we want to make sure that it feels authentic, that it sounds like the grants are written by them, because we're ultimately serving as an extension of their staff and helping them get back to what's most important, which is doing the work of their nonprofit. So, that's how I got into grant writing. There's so many different types of fundraising out there, but grant writing for me was just, I think, with my having been a writing teacher and, being in that area, it felt like just a natural fit.
The shoe fit, it sounds like. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You bring up something very interesting. I hadn't heard anyone in your space. A couple things. One was in follow-up, you mentioned how to keep that the funder engaged so they can give. I don't think people think about that from a grant writing or receiving a grant perspective. Is like, hey, just because we got the grant for this, next year, for instance, I'm just throwing illustrative terms out there, but you can engage that funder and create that relationship. I mean, double click on that a little bit, because I don't think people realize that that's even an opportunity, right?
Oh,
because you're still building a relationship, right?
Funders want to feel like they're a partner. They don't want to feel like they're just an ATM. And, just like people, they want to feel like they're in it with you. And so right from the get-go, when you receive funds, pick up the phone, make a phone call and thank that funder. Send it an email, send a handwritten letter, do something to show that
all those things. Do all of it. Yeah.
Then during the year, there's going to be reporting requirements. So, absolutely, you have to meet those reporting requirements. But in addition to that, maybe there's a moment where you take a picture of your programs in action. Go ahead and send that to your funders and say, hey, I just want to pop into your inbox and say, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to support us. Look at what we did today, and this is because of you. You're making them feel like they are attached to the program, that they've had an impact on the program. And then where it's reasonable, maybe you have a gala or some sort of annual, event that you can invite them to, maybe an annual meeting. Go ahead and include them in that and see if they want to join. Help them feel like they're part of your network, because again, they want to feel like they're partners. And if they don't want to attend these things, that's okay too. But as long as you're offering and you're sharing these updates, when you're sending reports, sometimes it's just over email. Again, if you can include a picture attached to your email, show them that you're impacting real people and that they're having an impact on real people.
I think it's so obvious and so overlooked. Pardon me. And you said, these folks are actually our partners, or they want to be treated like partners, I think is what you said. Well, they are. I mean, like, they are like real stakeholders in your organization. I mean, they're shareholders. I mean, they own ownership stock, so to speak, if we looked at it that way, right? And it's just, of course, I think just you said something beautiful where you're like, hey, you get the funds and what have you, pick up the phone. And people would go, what do I say? And you said it perfectly. You're like, well, you say thank you. We always say, if you don't know what to say thank you. I mean, that's a great place to start, right? Like, it's so obvious, but so under practiced. And I don't understand why. So I appreciate you being from the grant perspective or from the grant field, like even saying like, this is a relationship game, at the end of the day. And, we always say to fundraisers these days, we go, you're in the hospitality business. And they go, what? And I go, yeah, you're in the hospitality business, because at the end of the day, it's like these stakeholders, these folks that give, these givers, these donors, whatever label you want to use, these folks are going to remember how you treated them. And hospitality can be defined as thoughtfulness personified. So why wouldn't you send the report with a picture of the work that you're doing? People love that kind of stuff. And if they don't want to come, like you said, they'll let you know, or they won't. It is what it is. But so often, I think as humans in our society, at least, we think no news is good news. It's like, they gave, we got the grant. I do have to do the reporting. Maybe it's even like, mandated legally that I have to report and things of this nature, right? Of course, but the other human side of it, it's like, no news is not good news. And you're building a community, you said network, it's synonymous. It's like, I just don't understand why fundraisers, development folks, folks that achieve this success by receiving the funds don't do that necessary follow-up that can just mean the world for growth moving forward because of how they made the givers feel, very interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing that we like to do too is if you're planning to apply for a renewal grant, even if you have provided a report, mention in your renewal, how this is building on the impact that the funder has already had, because the reviewer might be a different reviewer than last time. And you want to remind them, hey, you've already had an impact. We are so grateful for you. We already sent our report, but again, let us tell you how great you are. And, there's a lot of, just trying to get some brownie points there of saying, we really appreciate you.
Hey, do you remember us? Do you remember us?
Yeah. I mean, there
great.
are some funders, every funder is a little bit different, but there are some funders that will hire, volunteers to review for part of the process. And those volunteers may not know that you've received funding before. So if you can name that, hey, we already have a relationship with this funder, you had a really deep impact already, and we want to build on that, it doesn't hurt. So definitely include that.
We always say it's like the best time to it's the first donation in the donation game, not necessarily the grant game, right? It's like, is not the hardest one to get. It's the one after. But once you're in the door and they've already experienced, I called it in sales back in my old, I started my professional career in sales and it was like, oh, the best time to sell something is right after you sold something because the pain, they had already experienced the pain. So why not, why not just, hey, you worked with us before. It just makes such obvious, real life sense. I totally get it. You said something interesting just now about trusting your volunteers to do that work and how that might not be, and volunteers, God bless them, but how that might not be always the best approach where you're offloading that responsibility that can end up being such a huge outcome. What's interesting is that you were talking, and I know that your firm, y'all offer the expertise in how to write the grants and the proofreading piece, and what's interesting, and I'm not just assuming this, I know it's happening, but I'm assuming it's probably happening more and more, is that folks that take the plunge, so to speak, and start writing these grant proposals, they trust someone who might not be totally acquainted with their organization, or they might use a tool like AI, which is lovely and it's a great tool. But talk to us about, and I could be completely off base here, but talk to us about the right approach in humanizing that grant writing process and the proposal process, and why. And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but why I think that AI is just a tool to help you, with some stuff, but you're actually really writing the proposal to a human being, not to a robot, right? And that that connectivity piece that maybe some folks just need to hear, if you don't mind.
I think you hit the nail on the head with saying you're humanizing it, and you have to think about it as there is a real person who is reading this, and how can you almost pull at the heartstrings a little bit, really connect to them as a person.
It's connected to the wallet.
And show that there is a real true impact. And I think that really that can only happen through human interaction or human writing. I think of ChatGPT or AI as a tool in a similar way that I think of as spell check. Spell check is amazing. It tells you when things are a little off. Sometimes what ChatGPT can be helpful with is maybe if you're writing and you have all the information together, you know what you want to say, but it's just not flowing the way that you want to, you can put it into ChatGPT and say, can you help me clean this up a little bit? And then take that and edit it and revise it to your liking. But you're not really asking it to do the whole thing for you. You're using it as a tool, as a part of the process. And you are making sure that it has that human touch. So when ChatGPT first came out, I think like many people, I panicked a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be obsolete? Am I going to lose all my clients because everyone's just using ChatGPT? And for a moment, I was almost afraid to use it. And then I said, you know what? I need to be caught up with the times.
Yeah.
ChatGPT and AI, they're here to stay. So I started
Yeah.
playing with it to see how I could use it as a tool. And
Yeah.
that's where I have found it useful is just, you know, if you're kind of stuck on a certain paragraph and you're just like,
Yeah.
I just want to make this part sound better, use it to help tweak it a little bit and help you revise things. But as grant writers, personally, I can tell if something is completely written by AI and versus a real person.
Yeah.
And someone else can do the same thing. So you still want to put your personal touch on it. You still want to make sure it's coming from a real human. You're sharing stories of impact. You're talking like a real human. You're not sounding kind of robotic, and having the tone that matches your organization too. Uh,
That's a good
our
point. The vernacular. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Your
yeah,
own language. Yeah. And making
hmm
sure that's consistent. Yeah. No. Um, well, as long as the recipient's always going to be a human being, yeah, you're never going to be out of business or
yeah,
obsolete. And it's very interesting to me. I think, I love that you got over the hump, so to speak. You're like, I'm not going to be afraid of this. It's
yeah,
exactly what it is. It's not going anywhere, and it's a tool. That's it, right?
yep,
And like, we'll bounce around some ideas and have a laugh about it here and there and stuff. But you can never separate the human side of it. And then once again, the recipient's always going to be a human,
yeah,
until otherwise noted or notified.
yeah, yeah,
But I would of caution folks in the nonprofit space that are going after these funds to not use it as a tool to corner cut, right?
mm,
And spend the time. Talk to me about like what you see and what someone that's on the fence or had a little bit of experience with it or even a little bit of success. What's the typical investment of time that you've seen? I
mm,
know that's a very broad question. I'm not trying to be vague,
sure,
but what should folks expect if they're going after these funds? Like how much should how many people hours should I
yeah.
assign to this task?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
So if we're talking about foundation grants, because
Yeah.
there are different
Yeah.
types of grant giving entities.
Well, I want to talk about
So
that too, because
yeah,
that's a giant pool of funds. So yeah, yeah.
yeah. So we tend to specialize in foundation and corporate funds. We do some
Yep.
state grants as well. Federal grants, we refer out to federal grant experts because it's, every agency is a little bit different.
Yep.
But we do a lot of work with foundations. And so if we think about a fairly typical foundation grant, if you are working without any pre-written foundational language, if you're working from scratch, I would typically say it could take about 10 hours to write a foundation grant from scratch. Now, what we do in our process is when we start working with somebody, we create some foundational language first in what we call a boilerplate template. So this helps us to make sure we know like what is the core language and how we're talking about this client's work. We want it to sound authentic. We want it to sound like it's coming from them. So if you have something like that to work off of, where you have a kind of a starting place, it's not designed to be cut, paste, and apply, but instead cut, paste, modify, adapt it, align it with what the funder is asking, and then apply. I would say that cuts the time in half. So it can take about 5 hours for a grant. But as if you're new, of course, it's going to take you longer if you're new to grant
Yep.
writing. One of the most tedious parts of grant writing is actually just fitting those responses into the character limits that are unique to each funder. And that's the fun part, just sitting there and trying to wordsmith as much as you can. And, that can be time consuming.
I get it. Do you think that folks, is it your experience that folks on the nonprofit side get a little long-winded when they're talking about their mission and they just kind of shorten things a little bit?
Mm. Well, it just depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're looking at the questions that funders are asking, because we've been in the business for a while, we can read between the lines and get down to the specifics of what are they actually asking. We can read between the lines there. So, for example, a lot of times funders will ask what your sustainability plan is, and surface level, that sounds very programmatic, as in what is your next step in your plan for this program? But actually
hmm
what they're asking is about your financials. They want to know,
Yeah, they want to see the P&L. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
what
Yeah,
other
yeah,
revenue do you have coming
yeah,
in? What is the
yeah,
financial plan for sustainability? And so just being able to read between the lines with things like that and have an understanding of, well, maybe what are they actually asking? That is where our expertise really comes in, and the framing of how to position this. Sometimes we'll look at grants from clients, before we've come in, and uh, it it has so much information that sometimes it's hard to get down to, like, what is the answer to the question. And
yeah, yeah,
sometimes when your head is in the work all day, every day, it's hard to step back and read it from the perspective of an outside person. I think that's
yeah,
where our team really comes in as helpful as well, because we are
yeah,
outside and we can look at the writing and say, would a funder understand what we're talking about?
yeah,
Uh, there is, I forget exactly the framing of this, but there is an analogy with responding to grants. If you think about a pyramid, where a
hmm
lot of times people will have an upside down pyramid where they have all the information and the explanation at the top, and then it takes until the very end to answer the question. We want to
right,
flip
right.
that, and we want to answer the question first and then give the background information that supports
Yeah,
it after. And a lot of times when you're writing about your own work, it's easy to do the opposite. It's easy to get into the weeds and talk about all
yeah,
the details. And then when you step away, it's like, well, what in the world are we even talking about?
yeah,
So
yeah.
our goal is to be concise, be as specific and concise and clear, so that no matter who picks up this proposal, they'll understand who you are, what you're asking for, and what you're going to do with that money.
Yeah, I mean, it's that speaks to so many parts of fundraising. It's like brevity of message. We used to have a rule. It's like, okay, do it again, half as long. With our messaging, like just with like email outreach or what have you. And because of course we can get so caught up in fluff. And what's interesting, we've coached a lot of groups about their missions, marketing, message, which is kind of a tongue twister for someone like me. But like, it's like it's like this is what we do in 10 words or less. If you want to know more, here's more. You know what I mean? But just like it's important no matter what. I just love that you brought it up. Just like the conciseness and brevity of message. Like get to the point, flip the pyramid, as you like to say, upside down. I think that's lovely. And that way, it's just like at the pointy part, we know exactly what's going on. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Answer the
Yeah,
question up top. We are requesting this much to be
yeah.
used for this purpose. And then let's explain our why, but answer the question
Wow.
that they're asking first.
It's amazing how many bright fundraisers, consultants, folks like yourself and other folks we've had on the pod recently are saying the exact same thing. At least I'm deducing from listening to experts in this space. I'm hearing folks go, "Hey, listen, tell folks what you want." Like we were talking to some folks that are consultants for mid-level and major gifts over the phone. And there's so much symmetry here because they go right for the money. It's like, hey, listen, this is how much we're looking to raise. This is how much you gave in the past. We'd love, and they just identify the need and the money, and it's like it's almost liberating a little bit, right? It's like I think a lot of folks, unfortunately, I had another talk with another expert. I mentioned four experts in the last 60 seconds, but they're like they project their own thoughts about
Mm,
money, about with their own checkbook, about just how they feel about what's going on in the economy or whatever it might be. I call it headline chasing, but that has
mm,
nothing to do with the conversation. Even if it's a grant proposal or if it's a phone call or an email or a recurring donation ad or what have you, it's just like get to the point, talk about the
mm.
money, get that out of the way. And it's liberating. And so many folks just have fear about just hitting that head on. It's like, but listen, at the end of the day, that's your need. And it also harkens to this. And I want you to speak to this, Lynn, from your experience. It's like, folks that have this kind of capacity, first and foremost, they're just regular people.
Mhm.
Their tires, they
Yes.
need to change their tires as often as we do. Their kids get sick. Like they just might have more capacity. They're still people. Like they got a hole in their shoe, maybe. You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is. But they're really smart about how they got their money. They're really smart about how they keep it and invest it, and they're really smart about how they give it away.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, but they also are very, very deliberate with their time.
Yeah.
So you're doing them a favor by being deliberate and with your intentionality about what you're
Yes.
asking and what you're trying to accomplish. And if they have a heart for what you're
Yeah.
doing, it will be obvious. You know what I mean? I just think we
Yeah.
can't talk about that enough, you know?
Yeah. And in fact, even thinking about how your proposal is neatly organized is
Yeah.
helpful. So I like to use bullet points and lists when I can, use subtitles, subheadings,
Yes.
because
It's for
while
retention.
you're
Yeah.
spending
Yeah.
maybe 10, even more hours on a proposal, there's a good chance that the reviewer is not actually reading every word. And if they're
Yeah.
scanning through to pull out that key information, make it easy for them to really
Yeah.
understand. So, if you have 3 goals, list it. Goal 1, this is our goal. Goal 2, this is our goal. So instead of having to read through, run on sentences and really lengthy paragraphs, try where you can to have some subheadings, have some bullet points, have some lists, things that make it easy visually to scan and pull some information quickly from a proposal.
And to retain. It's just like, but think about it, like there's probably more than one person writing that proposal, writing a proposal, right, to that funder. And it's just like, hey, I'll give you a good, a fair estimation. About 80, 90% of those folks are going to be a little bit long-winded, so to speak, So why not be different? Because everyone else is going to be going so long and so deep in the paint, so to speak, that they're not going to be concise. I love the bullet point idea because that's just how people that move quick, they have to make decisions like this. That's how they retain information. That's how they get, you get to know what's going on. It sounds simple, but it's so huge. And that's how you can differentiate yourself from other folks, from other proposals.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I'm not telling your
Yeah.
business, but yeah.
Yeah. And I would also say really being specific on how you are going to use the funds. And I can't,
Cool. That's good.
say
Yeah.
this enough because
Yeah.
this is something that I push my clients with. We will
Good.
say, okay, we're going to move forward on this grant. And I'll say, how would you like to use the funds? Because we're going to write about it. And they'll say, well, we want to expand our program. And I'll say, I have to push you more than that. Well, we want to expand and reach this many more people. That's great. But I want to push you more than that. Pretend you're pulling out your checkbook and you're writing a check to pay for an expense for your nonprofit. What are you paying for? Okay, this money will go towards the cost of this staff position, these materials, this cost of transportation. Be specific about how the funds will be used. Funders want to know, the exact line item in the budget, but also you need to read their requirements really closely because some funders will not fund staff positions or will not fund food or events and things like that. So you do have to be very careful and very detail oriented. That's a big part of what we're doing. We're going through all of the requirements and again, reading between the lines and making sure that we have a full understanding and that we can guide our clients on how these funds can be used. But, as specific as you can, just saying this will support our program growth isn't actually enough. Even when you're applying for general operating funds, I recommend to my clients to say, yes, it's for general operating, but let's tell them a little bit of what is your need right now? What will funds really support? Is it going towards a staff role? Is it going towards X, Y, and Z? So that they can get an idea. Funders want to know that it's not just going into the abyss.
Totally. Yeah. Give them the balance sheet. You know what I mean? Give them the snapshot of what they need. Yeah. And then, well, I almost call it like, I didn't think about this until just now. It's like, you're kind of like almost assuming the relationship is like, this is how transparent we're going to be.
Yes.
This is how easy it's going to be to work with us. So why not just assume that they're going to want to see all these things without over speaking, of course, but yeah, why not? I mean, we're going to be partnering up. They're making an investment in you. It just sounds like a good practice overall, right? First, any relationship that a fiduciary relationship, not necessarily even responsibility, which there is one, of course, but a fiduciary relationship has to start that way, where it's just completely forthcoming and we're going to peel the curtain back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Type thing. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that because there are also times where this, open conversation, we have to remember that this is key for keeping a funder's support too. Every now and then, something might change with an organization's program. Their plan has changed between the time of when you applied for funding and received the funding. And if suddenly you're like, well, we said we were going to use funds like this, but actually we need to use it like that, people will say, well, what do you do then? Pick up the phone, call the funder, and just have an
Yes.
honest conversation. And
Yes.
and it goes well. The times that it doesn't go well is if you wait until the end of the grant cycle to tell them. Tell them when it comes up. So pick up the phone as it's happening and say, hey, we're so appreciative of your support. We had a little change in our program and we'd like to pivot the funds to be used in this way instead. Is that okay
Yeah.
with you? Because the funds are from you. If you wait until the end of that reporting period, it's not going to look good on you to have held that information in for so long, and it can hurt your chances for a renewal.
I mean, the answer is always to communicate. You know what I mean? It's just like, how many stories have you heard like that? I love that you brought that up because, it's a relationship at the end of the day. Yes, you want to keep these folks on board. Hey, listen, they could have made a 6-figure investment in your organization. Hey, I'll tell you something, like call them, sorry for swearing, call them before shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
But you have a responsibility to call them and keep them up to date before shit hits the fan. And I got to be honest with you as well. A lot of investors, a lot of folks that donate these sizable gifts and grants, of course, to organizations, they want you to call them before shit hits the fan because they want to get involved. They made an investment in your organization. You know what I mean? Like they have an intrinsic tie, emotional as well, to see the success and see your organization thrive even during difficult times. So why wouldn't you call your top stakeholders? It just doesn't make any sense not
Very
to.
true.
Yeah.
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 And that's been my experience when I've seen this happen with clients and we call up the funder. Usually their response is, hey, we like your program. Do what you need to do with the funds. We appreciate you letting us know. Like, it's pretty simple. It feels scary to have to make that call because
It
the
does.
idea in the back of your mind is, what if they say we have to give the funds back? Well, that's a possibility, but it's going to be a lot worse if you wait until the end. So tell them now. And again, just emphasize how grateful you are for their partnership.
I'll tell you what, I've even heard some crazy stories, Lynn, just from the last, being involved for the last almost decade where some organizations were falling on some funding, some hard times. They got the board together, whiteboards out. We're, going through our Rolodex. Most powerful fundraising tool they had at the moment was their phones, and the folks they knew in their network. And they started writing down, can this person help? Can this person help? And if you call and tell one of your top stakeholders what you're facing and you call them first and get them involved, A, obviously they're going to appreciate it. B, not necessarily in this order, you owe it to them because they're an investor in your organization. And then C, they might get someone else in their network involved to help because they want to see you succeed. Like, you never know where these conversations, and if you lay the groundwork for that relationship early, often, thank you, gratitude plan, all of these things, keeping folks up to date, the pictures that you mentioned at the onset of the pod, is like all these things lead to that outcome. That's not a crazy outcome. That's actually pretty normal if you do it right. Yeah. I'm pretty passionate about picking up the phone.
Hey, me too. I can go
Yeah.
on for days about some of these things. Like, sometimes my clients will get really excited talking about philanthropy in general. And it's like, oh, if you get me amped up, I could keep talking about this for hours.
No, it's good. That's awesome. I appreciate it. Hey, I have a question I ask I frame it a little bit differently for every guest though. And I want to be polite with your time, but, I'm going to frame it for your world. My question typically is, fundraising is hard. It is difficult. We just all accept it. It is what it is. I'm not saying that to tell folks it can't be done, because it can be done. It can be done very, very well. Grant writing is hard. Don't make it more difficult by doing what?
That is a great question. I would say, I'm trying to think of how to frame this the best way. A big mistake that I often see, you've been talking about chasing the headlines.
Yes.
A lot of times clients will see a headline that, oh, this funder is releasing this big dollar amount to nonprofits, but they won't read the details on the type of nonprofit, the geographic region, who is actually the best fit for that fund. and they'll just see the dollar sign and they'll say, let's go after it. Or maybe their team has already gone after it. What happens is you spend all of this time applying for a fund that actually isn't well aligned with your mission or your geographic impact area. Maybe they don't support the same audience that you reach. And we're not actually going after the right fit funder. So, grant writing is hard. Don't go after the dollar sign. Instead, go after the right fit funders. That this is actually, we're doing a webinar tomorrow actually on this topic, where we're going to be talking about prospect research. And when you're thinking about who is a well-aligned or right fit funder, this is actually one of the main reasons why people will receive a rejection for their grants. It's because they're applying for grants that just don't align and they don't fit within the funder's qualifications. So you should be looking at the geographic impact area that the funder supports and make sure it aligns with your geographic impact area. You should be looking at the program and mission alignment. Take a look at their mission and values. Does it align with your mission and values? There could be something core to their programs that maybe just doesn't mesh well with yours. You should be thinking about the audience reach. Are they supporting students in K through 12? Are you focused on adults? Make sure that you have an understanding of that. The big one, though, I will say that people tend to miss a lot of times is that geographic impact area. For some reason, people miss that. Also look at their required budget size. A lot of times people will miss that and they'll spend all this time on an application and not realize that, hey, this funder is only supporting organizations with a budget of $1 million and higher, but you're just below that threshold. Maybe you're at $900,000 operating budget, and that cutoff is really hard for them. If you have a question about these qualifications, just email them. Like you said before, there's real people on the other side of this. Email them with the question if you have one, and usually that's okay. I will say, though, read their website, because if they don't want you to email them, they will tell you that on their website. So, just really, really read those qualifications carefully. Don't just say, oh, Bill and Melinda Gates, they're awarding $50 million to nonprofits. We should apply. But hey, have you read what type of mission-driven organizations they're awarding? Maybe it doesn't align with what you do.
Totally. No, I think that's massive feedback. Just speaks to understanding your audience, right? Yeah. It's because I've seen this in like different corporate asks and donation space, where we had a guest on, and she said the same as you. She said, hey, listen, if you're a food insecurity mission or organization, but you can really tell that this corporation just really loves animals, it's probably not a good fit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just understand your audience. Yes. There's plenty of money out there for you, but you know what I mean? It's
exactly.
Just
that sounds so obvious, but it's not always obvious to people, where, this funder is focused on healthcare. You're an arts organization. Totally. This is not a fit for you. And they'll say, yes, but they're awarding millions of dollars to nonprofits in New York. That is true. Maybe you're in New York and maybe you need the money, but you're not aligned with their interests.
So good. Yeah. No, I love it. That's great feedback. Well, you nailed that question. That was awesome.
Glad to hear it.
That sounds like it'll help anyone that's writing a grant proposal. If they've ever done it before, they've done a few, they've had success, all the above. Just keep that in mind, of course. And that's going to help folks on their learning curve, which is one of the main reasons why we wanted you here. And I just really want folks to understand the opportunity. You focus on foundational, gifts and funds. I think it's massive, a huge pool of funds. You want to drop some numbers on folks just so they could take it away from the episode, just the amount of opportunity out there?
Oh, it feels like there's almost endless opportunity out there.
Yeah, right.
Our company, we have secured over 16 million in grants since our founding. But there are millions of dollars in grants out there. I can't even quantify it, because there's so much opportunity out there. And, Google, I will say, can only take you so far for a search.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a lot of grant databases that are great resources to be able
Yeah.
to identify and find those good fit funders. And they're all different too.
Yeah.
Just to name a few, there's Grant Station, Instrumental, Inside Philanthropy,
Yeah.
Candid. There's all these different platforms, and they're all a little bit different. None of them are exactly the same, but they can help you find funders that maybe don't have a web presence, which is shocking that in today's day and age, there are major funders that don't have a
Yeah.
website.
It's not a prerequisite for giving away money. It's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
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 So you can find funders that don't have a website. You can search by your region. You can search by your mission, your audience. You can even do searches to see, look at similar nonprofits to you and see who has funded them. That's a great way to do some research. So there are just endless opportunities out there for funds, but it's really just knowing where to look, how to look, and how to know if this is a right fit funder for you.
That's awesome. It's good. Good. Lynn, I know you got to hop. This is your invite to come back. That was awesome.
Thank
I have
you.
more questions. I have more questions for you. So you got to come back. Here's your invitation to come back. Lynn McGinnity,
would
thank
love
you
to.
so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. Will you do us a favor? Will you tell folks the easiest way to find you?
Sure.
And you have your webinar series. Tell folks where they can find all that stuff if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and also thank you so much for having me. I'd love to come back. I feel like this has been a great opportunity.
Oh, we could talk about this for a couple hours probably. Yeah, this is great.
Absolutely. Well, if people want to learn more about me or my team, we are LMA Grant Consulting, and you can find us at www.lmagrantconsulting.com. On the website, you can learn a little about who we are, what we offer. You can sign up for our free webinar series. We have webinars that we hold once a month on different parts of the grant cycle. So our next one is on the topic of prospect research. And you can also see we have a referral directory. You can look at colleagues of ours in the consulting community if you're looking for support outside of grant writing. And right on our website, you can set up a call with us. So if you think that you're ready to work with a grant consulting company, you can schedule a call with us really easily right on our website.
Perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can't thank you enough for coming. It's so good. There's so much. I really hope folks can glean on this opportunity and information out there in this space right now. Once again, it's not that I'm tired of hearing about it, but there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of funds out there. Folks are uncertain about what to do and this and that right now. And I get it. And I'm sensitive to it. However, there's just so many resources, and yours is an obvious one that folks really just need to click on. So can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing, Lynn. Really appreciate you. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.